Inner Voice, a heartfelt chat with Dr. Foojan.
Break free from the forces holding you back. Get the life you deserve. Eliminate stress, reduce anxiety, decrease depression, and start living your full potential. Thousands have used Dr. Foojan Zeine's awareness integration theory, an evidence-based behavioral health breakthrough with incredible life-changing results. Getting rid of past trauma, having fulfilling relationships, increasing earnings, and living their best life. Now, the Foojan app is available to everyone. The app is Dr. Foojan Zeine's awareness integration theory in the palm of your hand. Download the Foojan app today.
Do you wish to wake up one day and hit the Life Reset button? Life Reset, the awareness integration path to create the life you want by Dr. Foojan Zeine, helps you navigate crucial life areas, heal the past traumas, and cultivate fulfilling relationships and careers. Life Reset is your guide to a profound journey to reshape your life. Grab your copy on Amazon or Audible now and embark on a path to a more joyous and fulfilled life.
Well, welcome to The Inner Voice, a heartfelt chat with Dr. Foojan podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Foojan Zeine, a psychotherapist and author and the creator of the Awareness Integration Theory. I am so thrilled to have you join us today for what promises to be an insightful discussion, I promise. In this episode, I chat with Kelli Miller. She's a licensed social worker, clinical social worker. She's an in-demand psychotherapist for individuals, couples, and families who specializes in relationships. She's been the host of All Things Relationships on Balance by Nature TV, a co-host on LA Talk Radio, and a relationship expert on SiriusXM and wikihow.com. Kelli has contributed to various national and regional publications and podcasts and speaks to groups of all types and sizes. She lives in Studio City, California. You can definitely get her and catch her at kellimillertherapy.com, KELLIMILLER therapy.com. In this episode, we kind of go over a lot of the matters that couples are struggling with, and it's important for them, like intimacy, communication, how to deal with your anger, how to deal with infidelity, how to deal with sharing who you are and your needs and your expectations and vulnerabilities, and when you get really angry, what to do, and we really explore not only issues, but she gives you amazing tips. So I'm sure that you're going to enjoy it as much as I have. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast, my YouTube channel, and connect with me through my website, foojanzeine.com, or any of my social media platforms. Share your thoughts with me. I love to hear from you. So without further ado, here's Kelli Miller with Love Hack, which is the name of her latest book, Love Hack.
Intentional Parenting, a practical guide to awareness integration theory, written by Dr. Jafari, Dr. Foojan Zeine, and Dr. Manoukian, three experts in human development, is your step-by-step guide to raising a healthy child prepared for a culturally integrated world. You're supported in parenting infants to adolescents using the latest evidence-based scientific research on parenting. Order your copy on Amazon now.
Eliminate stress, reduce anxiety, and decrease depression. Dr. Foojan Zeine's awareness integration theory has helped thousands like you get incredible life-changing results. The Foojan app gives you her evidence-based treatment in the palm of your hand. Download today.
Welcome, Kelli Miller, the author of Love Hacks. It's so nice to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I love the name, Love Hacks, simple solutions to your most common relationship issues. And I love the way you designed the book, Kelli, because it's designed kind of like issue-oriented, which I think it's so beautiful, because as you're going like, I relate to that. Oh, I can have that issue. I've been having that issue. So not only for people who are listening or viewing us, that you can go to this book and pick and choose your issues, but obviously, it leads from one angle to another. And you're a therapist, you're a licensed clinical social work, and you've been working with therapists for a long time. And obviously, when we sit in our office, people do usually come with a couple of issues. However, those issues might have deeper deeper concepts that they have to go through in order to clear those issues. So I love the way that you have set up the book. It's easy to read, and it really get a lot of great information on each chapter. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's totally why I designed it, because you have different issues throughout your relationship. And so I want people, they can refer back to the book if there's an issue later on, or if they need immediate help. And I just wanted to make it quick and simple because we don't have a lot of time. And so I want to help people quickly. So that was kind of the goal.
You kind of share about it's getting harder and harder for couples to be able to kind of facilitate working on their issues. What do you think is the reason that throughout the years, as you work with couples, that is harder to handle?
I think there's a lot more distractions now today than there were, let's say, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. We are constantly, we have our phones, we have social media, there's a lot of distractions. And I just don't think we're giving our partners that same quality time that we used to. So I'm all about carving those time for our partner. And then there's time for work. And we need to make it a priority again. I think it sort of falls by the wayside. And I think that's a big piece of it.
The distraction is a lot. Wouldn't you also think about expectations? Sometimes what I see also in the room is that the way that we have expectations from each other has, for some reason, gotten more and more. So they're maybe due to social media, maybe due to media overall, or people knowing that, you know, they deserve a particular relationship or a particular way of behavior. And there's expectations that happen, but I know in my practice, a lot of times I'm trying to clear these expectations and see if they're a little bit real or not, even in any realm, whether it's sexuality or intimacy or communication or in-laws or parenting, you know, personal space. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think we have to remember our partners can't be our everything. Right. So I think that's part of it too. I think there's this idea of, okay, our partner should be, you know, this to me, they should be my best friend. They should be a comedian. They should be, you know, all of these things. And it's like, no, we have to recognize like our partner can't be everything. So I think you're right about that. And there's a great quote I heard: expectations are resentments waiting to happen. So we have to, you know, remember that piece. Otherwise, we're going to get resentful toward our partners. So to me, it's about communication, right? If we feel like something's not working with our partner, it's really talking about that before it gets to that explosion level.
You also talk about the kind of landscape of sexuality has changed a little bit within the couple's dynamic. We keep hearing that there's less frequency, or even when we talk about the expectation, there's sometimes more expectations of what the sexuality could be or should be, or you know, the way that they pursue sexuality could be and should be. So what are your thoughts, and what is it that you're offering as far as tips into
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it's very couple dependent. I'm sure same with you. I have couples who have sex, you know, a few times a year, and they're totally happy, and they both are happy with that. And I've had couples where it's complete opposite. And so I think it depends. If one partner is unhappy with the frequency, that's when the discussion needs to happen. So I don't think there's a right or wrong. It's really what works for that couple. And for me, you know, when I talk about sexuality in the book, I think for me, where I've seen that decrease is where there is that resentment, like what you're talking about, on one side of the partner, and then nothing kills libido like a resentment toward your partner. So I talk a lot about communication tips and how to talk to our partner when we feel that way in order to get back to that physicality that's so important in a relationship.
And I go back to what you said at the beginning, which is the distraction.
Yes.
You notice that distractions have also kind of added to the concept of people not being together, because obviously, you know, sexuality, especially in the intimate partners where they're married or they're living together, takes a different layer, right? I mean, when people are dating, they have their own personal space, they do what they need to do, but when they get together, they have it as if these hours that we're going to be together, I'm going to focus on us. I'm not going to be focused on something else. But when people kind of live together or they're married or
Right.
the dynamic changes, right? Because we're in the
Absolutely.
same vicinity. So we don't necessarily say, these are the time that I'm just going to let go of everything and I'm going to look at us. So they're looking at everything. They're taking care of everything else in their life, or, even on their social media, on their phone, taking care of the kids, many of these things. And then suddenly they come together and it's time to sleep. It's time to just be for yourself. So what are your experiences of this kind of distraction all day where they don't really set up a time where they could be together?
Yeah. So I think that's why it's so important to have those date nights where you can say, okay, Wednesday nights, this is our time, 2 hours, doesn't have to be something lavish. It can literally be, let's just take a walk around the neighborhood. It's the idea that you are setting aside time for the two of you, you're prioritizing it. And then the other piece in the book that I talk about is something called Quick Partner Connections. And it's an acronym called TEAS. And so we can have these quick partner connections where it doesn't have to be this long drawn out process. So I talk about T is in the T's acronym is tradition. So can you create something with your partner that's just the two of you, where you say, we're going to talk about the 5 things we're grateful for, or every morning we're going to have coffee together. The E is efforts, right? Can we just do something for our partner? We don't even need to tell them, right? Can we, warm up their towel after they get out of the shower? Can we make the morning coffee? Can we, I had one couple who loved water by her bed and her husband put a pitcher of water by her bed. A is acknowledgments. So can we just acknowledge each other in cute little text, a written, thank you so much for working so hard, or, I love this about you. S is for silly. We forget that we can have fun again. So can we talk in a foreign accent to our partner and just, kick things off, dress up once in a while, just be silly and fun, because life can get so serious. And then the E is erotic, right? And so bringing back some of that fun, and it doesn't mean necessarily sex, but just a sensual poem maybe you want to send to your partner. And so these are all really quick things that we can do that doesn't need a lot of time. And I think that can help.
I love the tease because there's also this, as you were sharing with me, this came up for me where the flirting is so important.
Yes.
People flirt with people they don't know.
Right.
Right. But the part of the flirting that when you do it with your own mate, it creates that type of a novice and kind of a play.
Yes.
Right? It's playful.
Yes.
So that playfulness when you're doing this kind of all day,
Yes.
attempt to flirt with your mate, I think it brings a lot of what you said, that's why I said it was cute because it says tease, and sometimes we call flirting like I'm teasing.
Exactly.
So that just wanted to share that with you and the audience as we do, because that also adds so much to the intimacy and the sexuality, because constantly is sharing that type of energy with you, that I'm interested in you, I'm attracted to you, I'm hunting you, so I think that also has a lot more in added value to the sexuality.
Yes.
Everyone love hacks. Simple solution to your most common relationship issues by Kelli Miller. Kelli, there's also this concept that you share where people come to a relationship most of the time, not all the time, by the way, not most of the time, all the time with their own past. So the past, it can be hurt, it could be trauma, it could be unfinished businesses, whether it was through other relationships or it was about their, growing up or their childhood or something unfinished with one of their parents, and all of those that comes in. And it might show up as different types of communication skills. It could show up as part of their character that they're holding back. What are some of your suggestions that you share also in your book in how to deal with, partners' past issues as they show up in our relationship? There's no way of,
Yes.
no way of not finding ourselves in that midst, right?
Absolutely. I was just going to say, we all have baggage, right? That's number one. And I love this quote too. It's we all have baggage, but we have to find somebody who will help you unpack. And I love that because we all do, right? So that's the first piece. So I just want to normalize it. But yeah, I think it's knowing that every relationship is going to be different, because I think a lot of people, right, they have an ex from the past and there is this automatic assumption, oh, my partner in the present is going to be like that. And there's that fear. And so I like couples to get more inquisitive than accusatory. So let's say your past partner cheated on you, and we get it. You know, you've had hurt and you have trauma from that. And then you go into this current relationship and there's this fear around it. So be more inquisitive, or even just, just saying how you feel. Like I'm anxious about, this happening again, and coming up with ways that you can both reassure each other. And so again, it's not just putting it behind, it's really bringing it to the forefront and talking about it and working through it. And I think on the other partner's end, it's saying, hey, I know this partner has some trauma around this. I'm going to be patient, because it's hard being, a partner who's got, who has their other partner has some of that past stuff. So it's committing to, hey, I'm going to work through it with you. We're in this together, right? We're a unit now. And so we can work through it together, whatever that looks like.
The responsibility of knowing that I do come with that baggage, and that I am responsible for that baggage, and my partner can't really do a mind reading.
Yes.
Right. So, and you brought the concept of I statement and how do I communicate? And part of the concept of I statement is about me taking responsibility about my experience,
right,
and not kind of like dump it on you, like you shared. The example of I have experienced and kind of felt traumatized by infidelity and my past experience. So I need to also be responsible for my triggers. And yes, you're going to do a behavior, but it triggers me in this way. And so can you share a little bit about the structure of I statement? The reason I say this is a lot of times, I'm sure you've experienced this, people say an I, like they've heard about I statement. So they start the conversation with an I, and then they go right into blaming the other person.
It's so true. Yes. I'm so glad you brought this up, because you're spot on. They do that. So it's, I feel blank when this happens. It's not when you did this, right? It's when this happens. So we want to make it very clear that, because I think the other piece that people forget is our partner is going to be more receptive if they're not defensive. And that involves us talking about how we feel rather than what they've done. And so, yeah, I feel upset when, let's see, we had a plan and it didn't go through, or, something like that, where you're really focusing on what you felt. And it takes practice, and it's hard in the moment, because this is simple, but not easy, right? But it's so helpful, because even if we take ourselves, right, if we're presented with something in that way, it's so much softer on the ears than you did this and you did that and you always, and you should have, it's like, I think our reaction is to just sort of, feel almost numbed, like, oh, I can't, and so when we hear it gentle, it's just a much easier way to converse.
And to add with what you said, is one aspect of it is I take responsibility for mine, but I'm also kind of distinguishing between who you are versus the behavior that triggered me, right? Like the wording you said, I feel this way, or I think this way when, this behavior shows up, and this behavior is, although it showed up from you, but it's not necessarily you. Like when you say that, but if you did that and you always do that, then you're saying something about the person, which is going to get them a lot more defensive, versus say, okay, I'm okay. This behavior didn't show up well, or it didn't work out well. And you go through the book really explaining the I statement and teaching how to go through that communication and looping it back. If this type of communication also then intensifies more, let's say the intimacy between people. This kind of communication allows for you not to have those resentments that push you away from sexuality and intimacy, but also brings people closer to each other.
I think that's exactly right. I think, and the reason I put the I statements in the book is because I think a lot of times we're not modeled or taught this. We're just not. And so, or all we know is our parents our caregivers' relationships, and that may not have been the healthiest. So, it's not really our fault to say it's like we didn't grow up with this healthy communication. So it's just kind of learning what works with our partners. And like I said, it's just much gentler on our ears. So partners are going to be more receptive.
Right. And then the thing that you also share in your book, and I have seen this constantly, and I work with clients, is somehow anger is a natural feeling.
Yes.
It's going to come up, but doesn't work necessarily in an intimate relationship, because when there's anger, somehow love doesn't show up, a closeness doesn't show up, separation shows up. You need to defend yourself, right? Like the one who's angry is trying to defend themselves and kind of, yes, they're defending themselves by attacking, I get it, but the other person also needs to defend themselves, and in order to defend themselves, they raise also their anger. And sometimes you see that those two people going after each other's with anger, it creates separation. And if they, like you shared about resentment, if you keep holding that type of an anger internally as a resentment, obviously, we'll become more depressed. But that type of a resentment doesn't allow us to move forward. And you talk about how to handle those, when you have anger, how to communicate your anger in a way that we get closer to each other. So please share.
Yeah, sure. So for me, anger is not a primary emotion. To me, it's a secondary emotion. So what's underneath the anger? And typically it's hurt. So I created an acronym for anger called SHADE. And so, what's underneath the anger? S, sad. Are you upset about something that happened in the relationship? H is hurt. A is ashamed. Did you do something, in the relationship or to your partner where you're embarrassed or ashamed about? Because it's easier to be angry than it is to feel embarrassed or ashamed. D is disappointed. Did your partner disappoint you? And you feel that way. And E is embarrassed along those same lines. So I think if we can figure out what's underneath the anger first and foremost, which is hard, because again, when we're angry, we feel great, we feel powerful and in control. And so it's getting into that vulnerability that's tougher, but it's super important. And then we communicate that to our partner.
And how do you suggest communicating any of those emotions, the shade emotion?
Sure. Yeah.
How do we communicate it so that we could also be taken care of and heard? And because we're vulnerable when we're trying to share, right? The anger kind of takes care of the vulnerability, because we're going to be the tough, huffing and puffing and tough, as if like that's the defense that's holding all of these vulnerability. But as we recognize all of the other emotions that are under this umbrella, and then we open it up, we're also experiencing a lot of vulnerability as we're sharing it. And so how do you suggest for us to share this and protect ourselves all at the same time?
I think it's this commitment that you're going to have with one another of, hey, we're both going to experience anger at times. Let's talk about how we're going to be here through it, and that it is going to be difficult for both of us. And we're both going to, we need to communicate these vulnerable feelings, but we're in it, right? And I think that's because I think what you're describing is like one partner feeling insecure that if they go there, will this relationship work? Or, will I lose my partner if I kind of get really vulnerable and deep and, and that kind of thing, which is a natural fear for sure. Yeah.
I've also noticed, Kelli, that sometimes it's different when you're angry and dumping it on your partner, or you're sharing it with them versus dumping it. Mm-hmm. Because obviously when you're just attacking and bringing your anger directly, even with all of those emotions under it, that the person goes into defensiveness. And I've noticed that sometimes when you set it up that way, like I'm really angry and I want you to sit beside me and just hear all of those emotions and not take them personally, but just hear me. Sometimes setting it up as a communication concept, it makes it easier for the receiver not to go into this kind of like protective shield, and they can actually hear all of those beautiful emotions that are there that need to be shared.
I think you said that perfectly. I completely agree. That setup is key. It really is. And it prepares the person like, okay, yeah, I like that.
Another concept in your book is how to deal with addiction, because obviously addiction, whether it's to behavioral and process-oriented concepts, minimum is your phone.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. We work with people who possibly have porn addiction, which they, kind of got while they were a teenager and it never, shifted from them. Or they have substance addiction, food addiction, any of those type of an addiction processes, which obviously there's a high ratio of that among people. And part of those baggages we bring into our relationships. What are some of your suggestions? How do we deal with addiction in our
relationship? I think it's super important for the partner who is not that does not have the addiction to also get help. And I think that's going to be the key, because what they call it, alcoholism, is a family disease, right? It affects everybody. And so I think if there is something that's impacting your relationship, both people can get help. So that the partner who has the addiction can get help in whatever way they need. And there's so many online resources and things to help them in their particular addiction. And then the partner who struggles with their partner who has the addiction, want them to get help too. And there's so many programs that people don't know about. There's something, for example, Al-Anon, which is for partners of alcoholics. And so they can kind of work on and how to get well themselves. Because I think what happens is when our partner has an addiction, we sort of take it on and then our needs are pushed to the side. And so it's super important for us to then get healthy while our partner does as well. So I think that's a key part of it. I think it's being patient and knowing that this isn't going to change overnight. There's going to be relapses, I think, and then just knowing, reassuring your partner that you're in it with them so then they feel supported. And then I think, that again, that communication of, how that person is feeling and checking in, because I think hiding is a big one where then partners feel betrayed in a sense, if they're not akin to what's going on. So I think that maybe making a pact that hey, while you go through this, can we be fully honest and transparent with each other so that I don't feel like I'm in the dark while you struggle through this.
So important, because I think that a person who has the addiction, many times they are in denial, and that's part of the whole. Let's say if we're talking from a disease model, that's part of the symptomology. And I think that the person who is not and is the mate, when they don't know the dynamic of what that addiction is, then they fall into this kind of either enabling or not enabling or just getting angry and all of it. So I also, just like you said, I suggest getting information more than anything. Just reading about addiction, the dynamic of addiction, going, like you said, to different groups. There's so much YouTube channel, information that you could learn and start learning the dynamic of what happens. It's amazing, Kelli, and I'm sure you've experienced that. Then when people actually start going and learning about what addiction is, whether they're the one who's suffering from addiction or their mate, the whole concept of the behind the veil of addiction, they start looking at, wow, yes, this is what's going on. And, I don't have to have the shame that, right, this is something that is a process that I need to look at, and how I can look at myself and how I need to treat. And based on our beginning of our session conversation was, the whole expectations of how this is going to be. Like, okay, I'm going to go, detox, and that we're done. Nothing else.
Right, exactly.
Right?
Which is, yeah.
So, or, my mate is just not going to use, and from tomorrow, all is going to be well. Well, that's going to be a heartbreak of disappointment. So it seems like a lot of the information is important for that.
I think you are exactly right. I think education is key, because I lost you for a second.
There you are, back. Okay, good. Go ahead.
Sorry, I don't know if you missed that piece, if you want me to repeat that part or.
Please. You just said there's a key and then we didn't get you.
Yes, so I was saying education is key in that the more we learn, the more compassionate we can be towards our partner because we understand why and what they're struggling with. And it's just like anything, understanding more about it brings us to that level of, okay, I get it. I understand a little bit more. Because I think, we can create our own narrative of they're doing this on purpose or why can't they just stop? And there's so many factors that we aren't aware of, genetics. I mean, there's so many different things that set up addiction. But I think that education is going to make a big difference on both ends, right? Understanding the addiction from why our partner's struggling with this. And then for us, how can we get that help and why that's important.
You're also an advocate for private space, having our own timeout, having a space for us to really, really look at who we are. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I think what happens typically in couples is naturally they're going to get escalated and they're going to get into these arguments. And so what I created is timeouts for partners when they get to that level. And so it's really our responsibility as people to check in. When am I getting to that level? If we're scaling from 1 to 10, where 1 is totally calm and 10 is I'm going to explode, kind of checking in when you're at about a 6, like kind of saying, okay, I'm going to need a timeout. And it's not a punitive measure. It's, hey, we're both not going to be able to hear each other if we're at this explosive level. So let's just, obviously we're getting too heated here. Let's just take a break, both recenter, give it, a few hours and then come back and talk again. And that pause is so powerful. It's really hard to do in the moment, but it's so necessary. And then you're basically preventing a lot of words that you wouldn't want to be said later on, things like that. And it's good for, I think, even outside of relationships, just when we get to that level of like learning like how to, okay, I need to recenter. I need to do something to calm me down.
And what do you suggest for that recentering?
So anything that works for you. So I have clients who just listen to music, take walks, call a friend, whatever it is, just to sort of like settle down, journal, whatever it is for you that's going to bring back some of that recentering. And I say there's no limit on the timeouts. Like if you are a couple that is consistently arguing, I'm like, it's okay. Take 5 timeouts. If you are realizing you're getting to that level, okay, we need to pause. Let's come back. Okay, we're going to have some other communication, but hey, we're getting to that level again. We got to start it because I think it's breaking those unhealthy habits that we need to start. And that's going to build some of that healthy communication.
Mm-hmm. Well, you talk about communication and you have created a fast food communication method.
Right.
So share the fast food one.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of times what these arguments are about are miscommunications with our partners. And so if you think about when you go to a drive-through restaurant, you're going up and you place your order. Let's say you say, large fries and a hamburger. And then the employee repeats it back to you. And they even put it on the screen to ensure accuracy. And so they repeat it back. Okay, I see you wanted a hamburger and a large fries. It's like, and then you have that choice to say, yes, that's right. Or no, you didn't hear me correctly. And so I want us to do that with our partners the same way. And it's very simple. It's just, hey, what I'm hearing you say is. And so that way it gives our partners the chance to A, feel validated, they heard what I said, and B, make sure that the communication is intact, that it's exactly what I was trying to communicate. And this is really good for important topics and things that are maybe difficult to discuss, but I just think it's a good way for everybody to kind of slow down too. Because I think sometimes when we hear something, we want to jump in and we want to, defend, or we want to talk about our part or how we can help or whatever. And it just allows that moment for that other person to feel heard and respected.
One of the most important factor that I've also heard with choosing a partner, it's always like, oh, she was my best friend, or oh, it was like we always knew each other for such a long time, or I feel close, or I want my maid to be my best friend. One of the things that we realize is best friends are, it takes 2 things to be a best friend. 1, I can be safe with you and I can be vulnerable with you. And 2, you're not going to judge me if I'm vulnerable and I can be safe, right? That's how we kind of choose best friends. And you share that also in your book, that vulnerability and staying vulnerable, allowing yourself to be vulnerable with your partner is one of the most important factors where you allow connection to happen. So can you share about that a bit?
And I think it's so scary. I'm sure people even listening to this, it sounds so terrifying, but that is the building block of connection. Because if we don't have that, then we're just creating a wall, and you're not building that intimacy that's so needed. So it is hard and it takes practice. And so, I always say, just go slow, right? So if couples that I work with all the time where one of them has really difficulty with this. And so kind of one of the assignments I give is, okay, I want you to share, one thing, that's maybe difficult, to talk about this week. And, even if you just want to say the sentence and you're not, you don't want any feedback, or you just want acknowledgement around it, but just that practice of, and if there isn't something or they're not quite ready, I'm like, make something up, because I just want them to be in that space where they can kind of sit with that discomfort of that intimacy and vulnerability.
Yes, absolutely. Everyone, Love Hacks, Simple Solutions to Your Most Common Relationship Issues by Kelli Miller. Kelli, in closing that couple minutes, is there anything we haven't shared about whether your book Love Hacks or is, your practice and wanting to share something with our audience about your experience all these years with couples that they really need to know?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much again for having me. I think the important thing is, I think we're very quick to exit when things aren't working out. And especially in this culture where things are happening at lightning speed and we can order Amazon and it comes quickly and things like that. And so I think it's very easy to think like, okay, if something's not working in the relationship, I'm just going to leave. But we bring our patterns with us to the next relationship. And so it doesn't always work out. But I think what I want to communicate is that, there are ways to work through things. We just need to be patient, and, using a lot of the tools that I talk about in Love Hacks, I think can help that. And so, I'm pro helping couples work through these really difficult things. And, if you look at a span of a relationship over time, you're going to have these blips that are going to be difficult. But if you look at the whole, chart, so to speak, then you can see that there could be progress, and we just have to stick through those hard times. And then the last piece, we didn't touch a lot about infidelity, and I know that's a big topic for couples. And so, I think just my 5 tips around that, if there is infidelity in the relationship, is for that partner to take accountability. That's huge. And then expressing remorse, acknowledging the harm, committing to change, and then requesting forgiveness. And I talk more in details about that in Love Hacks, but that's just something, just the quick and easy that can kind of help move couples forward.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to gain these skills, regardless of at one point you decide to move on to another relationship, or you use these skills in your relationship, changes to the better and transforms. Ultimately, having and being in a relationship takes a lot of skills, and Love Hacks gives you a lot of great tools in giving you those skills where you could practice, and hopefully you could practice them where you are today, in the relationship you're today, because you're going to need these skills regardless of which relationship you're going to be in.
It's very true. And I think it's saying, to our partners, hey, I want to try to make this work, or I want to try to do new things. Can you be patient with me while I try it? Because I may not be great at this, or I may slip up and go back into my old patterns. So I think it's just this idea of trying that's so key, in our relationships.
Where can people find you?
So my website is Kelli with an I, millertherapy.com. And then the book can be found on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all of those. And then also on Instagram, I'm Kelli Miller Therapy also.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And for all of you who are out there, create an amazing life for yourself and everyone around you. And until next week, bye-bye.
Are you a psychotherapist looking to enhance your practice? The Awareness Integration Therapy developed by Dr. Foojan Zeine is a comprehensive guide to the principle and techniques of this powerful therapeutic approach. Join the growing community who have elevated their practice and expanded their skills by embracing Awareness Integration Therapy and witnessing its life-changing impact. Order your copy on Amazon now.